Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopijana Balava Giribaradhare Gopijana Balava Giribaradhare Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Gauranitai Jai Gauranitai Jai Gauranitai Jai Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jai Gauranitai Gauranitai Jai Gauranitai Jaya Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Jaya Nitai Gauranga Jaya Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Jaya Nitai Gauranga Jai Sachinandana 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Vishnuvad Paramahangsa Parivrajacharya Status Sismad. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki. Grantaraj Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Ki. Shri Giri Govardhan Ki. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki. Sankirtan Yagya Ki. Go Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna. Devotees, thank you for coming. How nice to be with you on this also very auspicious day. Yesterday, of course, was super auspicious, just one of the most wonderful days of the year. And today is also, it's really nice. Just like we have the appearance of Lord Krishna, Krishna Janmashtami, and then the next day is the festival day, Nandotsava, the festival day of Nanda Maharaj, the father of Lord Krishna, celebrating the appearance of his child, Lord Krishna. Now, of course, we have special situation in Srila Prabhupada's ISKCON in that on that day, which is generally celebrated by many Vaishnav groups as just the festival of Nanda Maharaj. So in our cases, of course, in ISKCON, the day after Janmashtami is Srila Prabhupada's appearance day. So the focus is very much on that, and the fact that it's also a festival day anyway, as observing the occasion of Nanda Maharaja's festival for the appearance of his son, Lord Krishna. So, but in the same way, just as Janmashtami and then the Nandotsava the next day, it happens. So here we have Gopurnima, the appearance day of Lord Chaitanya, and the next day is the festival of Jagannath Misra, celebrating the appearance of his son, Lord Chaitanya, who of course happens to be Krishna. And before we go through what happened on that day, the day after the appearance of Lord Chaitanya, before we go into that, just to kind of encourage you a little, I want to read the blessing. There's a blessing, a benediction, Ashirvad is there. Specifically, it's actually in Chaitanya Bhagavat. And before we go through the pastime of the appearance, not exactly the appearance, but the festival just immediately after the appearance of Lord Chaitanya, I want to read to you this blessing. And because if you are able to do what the blessing says you need to do to get the blessing, well, you'll get the blessing. Yeah. So just listen to this. It's a few sentences, and it culminates in the blessing, or actually two blessings. So, Lord Chaitanya appeared on the full moon night of the month of Falguna, a day thus worshipped by Lord Brahma and others. This day, that's yesterday, this day is the reservoir of devotional service and therefore most sanctified, because the Supreme Lord, the best of the Brahmins, appeared on that day. Lord Nityananda appeared on the 13th day of the waxing moon in the month of Magh. That was just a few weeks ago. And Gaurachandra appeared on the full moon evening in the month of Falguna. These 2 days are most auspicious because all favorable planetary conjunctions are present on these days. Therefore, whoever observes these 2 days attains devotion to Lord Krishna and freedom from the bondage to ignorance. Whoever hears about the appearance of Lord Gaurachandra will never feel distress, either during this life or at the time of death. So hopefully that will encourage you to give your attention. Attentiveness, of course, is emphasized in Krishna consciousness. Attentive chanting and just attentive everything in Krishna consciousness. So first of all, a little invocation. Sa prasidatu Chaitanya Devo Yasya Prasadata Taulila Varnane Yogya Sadyasyad Adamo Pyayam. I wish the grace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by whose mercy even one who has fallen can describe the pastimes of the Lord. Yes, that's Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, who is describing the pastimes of the Lord. And in order to do that nicely, he's wishing the grace, he wants the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. Okay, so here is a little background. So, Lord Chaitanya's father, of course it's pastime. Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And unlike us, we all have fathers and mothers in the regular biological sense. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. So we all have parents in the usual biological sense, and I know that at least some of you here are parents also. But if you're not, don't worry too much, because in previous lifetimes, I'm sure you've been parents more than enough times. So the father of Lord Chaitanya, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is Jagannath Misra, who in Krishna's pastimes is Nanda Maharaj, the father of Krishna. And the mother of Lord Chaitanya, the wife of Jagannath Misra, the mother of Lord Chaitanya is Sachi. Her name is Sachi, or Sachi Devi. Sachi Devi. So, and just another personality who plays a part in the pastime we're going to be going through, the festival of Jagannath Misra. The father of Sachi, Sachi Devi, Mother Sachi, the father of the mother of Lord Chaitanya. In other words, Lord Chaitanya's maternal grandfather was Nilamba Chakravarti, who was a very prominent and highly, highly qualified Brahmin from that area, the Navadvip area and surrounding areas, Navadvip Dham. Yes. So now, interesting point. You remember what happened? Well, Mother Sachi, just to mention, is Mother Yashoda, the mother of Lord Krishna, the wife of Nanda Maharaj, in those pastimes 5,000 years ago. So here, she's Sachi Devi, and her husband is Jagannath Misra, and Lord Krishna appears as their son, as Lord Chaitanya. So now you may remember, if you're familiar with the pastimes of Lord Krishna and his appearance, if you're familiar with the appearance of Lord Chaitanya, of Lord Krishna, then you would know that Vasudeva and Devaki, who are, well, also the parents of Krishna in Krishna Lila, the sort of immediate parents, so to speak. Immediate in that Krishna appeared to them, but then within a matter of just an hour or something like that, Vasudeva took him and left him with Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, who are generally known as the main parents of Lord Krishna. But Mother Yashoda, prior to the appearance of Lord Krishna as her son, she had given birth to a number of children, 7, who had been killed by Kamsa. Vasudeva and Devaki were locked up in the prison, and every year or so they gave birth to a child, and Kamsa took the children, the first 7, killed them. In the case of, and then the 7th was Lord Balaram, who, anyway, it's a bit of a long story, but he ended up appearing from Rohini, and the 8th, of course, was Krishna himself. In the case of Mother Sachi and Jagannath Misra, Mother Sachi gave birth to 8 children, all daughters, but they all died immediately after birth. Then, her 9th pregnancy, she gave birth to Vishvarup. Vishvarup is the older brother of Lord Chaitanya. And Vishvarup was the 9th child. And he's a form of Lord Balaram. And then Lord Chaitanya appeared to them as their 10th child. So a little bit of background also just in terms of pastime. It's an interesting little point. It's like a pre-appearance pastime of Lord Chaitanya. 6 months into the pregnancy of Sachi with Lord Chaitanya, Advaita Acharya, great devotee and incarnation actually of the Lord, he got the inspiration that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is going to take birth from the womb of Sachi, who's pregnant right now. So Mother Sachi and Jagannath Misra, they didn't really know who is going to appear as their child. She was pregnant, but it wasn't clear to them who is going to take birth as their child. But Advaita Acharya, he got the inspiration. So 6 months into the pregnancy, Advaita Acharya arrived at the house of Jagannath Misra and Mother Sachi. And of course they received him nicely, but then he got into a special program. Suddenly, tears started flowing from his eyes, his body started shivering in ecstasy, and he picked up some agapati and lit it and offered arti to the womb of Sachi. And they're thinking, wow, that's really quite something extraordinary. And then, you know what he did? He took some sandalwood paste and applied it to her womb area. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, he did that. And Sachi was just so surprised. And Jagannath Misra was kind of bewildered. What on earth is the Acharya doing? Because he's such a famous devotee, Advaita Acharya. At that time already, he was the leader of the Vaishnavas in the whole area. So anyway, he did that. And then devotees, he circumambulated her 7 times. Anyway, they didn't know what was going on. And they were just wondering, why is he doing this? And at the end, after the circumambulation, he bowed down and offered obeisances to her womb. And then after he had done that, her womb became 100 times more effulgent than it had been. This is all very transcendental, devotees. So this happened before, setting the scene. Then, here's another interesting point. Maybe some of you might not be aware, but Mother Sachi was pregnant with Lord Chaitanya, not for the standard 9 months or whatever, something along those lines. Have I got it right? 9? Give or take. Yeah, not for the standard 9 months or so. She was pregnant with him for 13 months. And of course, he's developing all the time. At least it's not like with Shukadev Goswami, who remained in his mother's womb for 16, not months, 16 years. Hare Krishna. And refused to come out. So then Lord Chaitanya appeared on the full moon night, just as the full moon was rising. But then just as the full moon was rising, an eclipse happened. We talked about that. What was that? Yesterday morning, I think. An eclipse happened. The silver full moon felt embarrassed because Gaura Chandra, the golden moon of Lord Chaitanya, was appearing, and the silver moon was going to look very cheap and tinny next to the golden moon of Lord Chaitanya. So he appeared in the evening then, and it was a bit late, because normally the birth of a child in any culture, but very much in Vedic culture, the birth of a child, it is a matter of celebration. And, people don't just phone up and say congratulations. People come and it's a festival. And they bring gifts and it's a whole festival. But it was too late to have the festival because it was already probably like 7 o'clock or something in the evening, and the eclipse was going on, and people were in the Ganges. So the festival for the appearance of Lord Chaitanya was held the next day. That's today. And it was a big event. Chaitanya Charitamrita gives a description. It's not so detailed, but it's a nice description. Different devotees, Advaita Acharya, of course, he knew what was going on. So as Lord Chaitanya was appearing the Gorpanima night, he, with Haridas Thakur, they were just celebrating in ecstasy. And even Haridas Thakur didn't know, why is Advaitacharya so ecstatic? So then the next day, today, people started coming around to Jagannath Misra and Mother Sachi's house. And all sorts of respectable people, Brahmins and others, came bearing gifts of different sorts. And seeing the child, who was the color of molten gold, they'd never seen such a child before. Like molten gold, effulgent, rich gold color naturally. So they all offered blessings, they offered gifts, different foodstuffs, cloth, and different things as gifts. But then the demigods came, because they knew who is this child. So Lord Brahma came, Lord Shiva came, Lord Nrsingadev came, Lord Indra, and various others came in disguise, of course, along with their wives, bearing different gifts, all different types of gifts. And in the sky, in outer space, the Gandharvas, who are demigod musicians, they were singing, and flower petals were coming down. It was a most incredible, heavenly and transcendental scene. And in the midst of all this, Jagannath Misra and Mother Sachi are there with little Nimai, little Lord Chaitanya. He hasn't been named yet, but little Lord Chaitanya, they're all there with him. And they see all these different people. And of course, Jagannath Misra and Mother Sachi, they know all the Brahmin community. They know all the respectable Brahmins. So they know all these people, or a lot of these people who are coming. But then you get the demigods, and Lord Nrsingadev even, and their wives coming disguised. And of course all the local Brahmins, they're speaking Bengali. But the demigods, their wives, and so on, Lord Nrsingadev, they don't speak Bengali. They speak Sanskrit. So Jagannath Misra and Mother Sachi, suddenly they hear some people conversing in Sanskrit, which just doesn't really happen. It didn't really happen at all in those days. And they couldn't recognize these people. So again, it's just like overwhelming situation. What is going on? So Chaitanya Charitamrita says that they couldn't understand who was coming. They couldn't understand who was going, who was dancing, who was singing, because there was just this really big festival going on. And they oftentimes couldn't understand the language being spoken, but all they knew was it's ecstatic. It's just completely ecstatic. So then Chandrasekhar and Srivas Thakur, very great devotees and associates of Jagannath Misra, they reminded him that that different ceremonial functions need to be carried out. So they started organizing those different functions, certain samskars. And then they also reminded Jagannath Misra that you have to give charity. And Jagannath Misra, whatever he had in the way of gold and things of value in that sense, he just gave it all. But he didn't have much because he was a poor Brahmin. So then he started giving charity within his mind. Now, when we come to you and we're trying to raise some Lakshmi for developing something in Krishna consciousness, please don't just tell us that, okay, now how much do you want? How much is it going to cost? 10 million rands? I'll give you the whole lot in my mind. But this is a practice, a Brahminical practice, when you can't actually give charity exactly, you can give it within your mind. So that's what Jagannath Misra did. And then Malini Devi, the wife of Srivas Thakur, she came along with other of the wives of the associates of Jagannath Misra, the Brahmin associates, and they gave different items. They gave vermilion, married ladies put it in their partings sometimes in South Africa. Yeah. Vermilion, which is put in the parting of a married lady. They brought turmeric. They brought different types of oils. They brought what they call, in Bengal, they call it kai. And kai is more or less puffed rice, muri. It's more or less, it's a form of puffed rice. Bananas, coconuts, they gave. But then what happened was that Nilambar Chakravarti arrived, the father of Mother Sachi, and he was a very big, very prominent and very senior Brahmin. So he came to do the horoscope of the child. This is Vedic practice. Of course, you need someone who can actually do a proper horoscope, and I think they're in extremely short supply these days. But Nilambar Chakravarti, he was such an expert Brahmin. He could do accurate horoscopes. And also he could understand who the child, in any particular child they're doing the horoscope for, who they were in the previous lifetime. So, Nilambar Chakravarti, he sat down and started doing the analysis in order to produce the horoscope. And first thing he said was that, I'm looking at this child, and, I have heard a prediction that in the future a Brahmin will be born who will become the king of Bengal. And I think this may be the child. But then he started getting into it more deeply, working out the details of the horoscope. And he just became astonished and overwhelmed. And Nilambar Chakravarti said, you know, the qualities of this child that I'm seeing in his horoscope, they are beyond those of a king. They're beyond any possible description. Because he had said, maybe this child will become the king. There's been a prediction of some sort like that. But now he's saying that what I see in the horoscope is that this child is more than a king. And it's not even possible to really describe him adequately in material terms. This child will be more learned than Brihaspati. Brihaspati is like the spiritual master, the priest of the demigods. And he's a very, very great personality. But Nilambar Chakravarti said this child will become greater than Brihaspati, and he will manifest all good qualities. So then something quite extraordinary happened. Some unknown Brahmin who looked like just a very wonderful Brahmin, but nobody knew who he was. This unknown but obviously great Brahmin, he just stood up and just started talking about Lord Chaitanya. And this is from Chaitanya Bhagavata actually. And it doesn't say who was that Brahmin. All it says was he was a very great Brahmin. So maybe he was some divine person who had descended to participate in the festival. So he got up, this great Brahmin devotee stood up and began describing Lord Chaitanya's future activities. And he was the first one to say, actually, this child, I can see, he's non-different from Lord Narayan. He's actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He will re-establish religious principles. He will preach in amazing ways. And this child is going to deliver the whole world. So everyone is just completely entranced. This Brahmin devotee is just, he's got so much potency as he speaks. And he said, this person will give everyone love for God. That same love of God which is desired by Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, even by Shukadev Goswami. That same love of God everyone will receive from this child. And when people just see this child, they'll develop love for him. And just by seeing him, they'll naturally develop compassion for all living entities. This is the effect this child is going to have on the people. And along with compassion, they'll develop complete detachment from the material world. And then he said, what to speak of nice people like this? Even the Jagannaths, the untouchable meat eaters, even the Jagannaths who are averse to Lord Vishnu, averse to Lord Krishna, they will worship the lotus feet of this child. And you can imagine everyone who's there, there's so many people there, and particularly Jagannath Misra and Mother Sachi, they're hearing these things, and it's just totally incredible. They never expected anything like this. And then that Brahmin said, the glories of this child will be sung in innumerable universes, not just around the local area, not just on this planet, but in innumerable universes. And everyone will offer respect to this child. He is the personification of religious principles. He is the benefactor of the demigods. The Brahmins, the benefactor of the spiritual masters, the benefactor of his father and mother, and the benefactor of all the devotees. So then he said, so who can explain, who can understand the auspicious symptoms which are displayed in his horoscope? It's not possible. If you remember, Jagannath Misra was struggling to express what he saw in the horoscope, but this now great Brahmin devotee, he's really explaining and clarifying to everyone. So that Brahmin devotee, then he offered respects, he bowed down before Jagannath Misra, and the devotee said, the Brahmin devotee said, you know, I think this child's name should be Vishvambha. This was actually the first name that Lord Chaitanya was given, sort of like his official name was Vishvambha, which means the supporter of the Vishva, of the whole universe. But then that Brahmin said, people will also call him Navadweep Chandra. And please know, this child is the personification of spiritual ecstasy. So the Brahmin, he's looking deeper and deeper into the Lord's horoscope. Somehow or other, he's got some tremendous powers like that. And you know what he saw next? He saw that Lord Chaitanya was going to take sannyas in due course. And you know what he did about that? He didn't mention it. He didn't say it because he thought it would be like a rasabasa, the wrong thing to throw into this ecstatic atmosphere. So Jagannath Misra, the Brahmin offered him his obeisance and says, Jagannath Misra offered him his obeisances. He wanted to give charity, but he had nothing left, and he hadn't had much to begin with. So all he did, he caught hold of that Brahmin devotee's lotus feet, and he just cried and cried on the lotus feet of that devotee. So, yes, all these things are going on. It's just like so many completely unexpected and like otherworldly things are happening. And then another special thing happened. Aditi, the mother of the demigods, she came, disguised as a Brahmin lady, but she's Aditi, the mother of the demigods, the mother of Lord Indra, and so many of the demigods, Chandra, Surya, all these demigods. So she arrived, and with her right hand, she put raw rice, uncooked rice, and not Aunt Caroline, but real like paka. In Bengal, they use basmati, but what is preferred is Govinda Bhog, is a type of rice. It's short grain and kind of fat, but that's considered in Bengal to be very, very good rice. So she placed some raw rice and durva grass. It's a special type of grass which is used for seating during yagyas and things like this. It's a very special type of grass. So she placed raw rice and some durva grass on the head of little Lord Chaitanya. And then she blessed him. Live a long life. Live a long life. And she repeated that a few times. Live a long life. Live a long life. And Mother Sachi is watching Aditi, and she can understand this is not a local Brahmin. This is some just extraordinary person coming from another realm. But she felt too shy to ask, who are you, where you're from? Then Aditi and all her associates, the other demigoddesses, they all came over to Mother Sachi. They all offered their obeisances to Mother Sachi and took the dust from her lotus feet. Yeah. So, Chaitanya Bhagavat says, the happiness that was there in the house of Jagannath Misra at that time could not be described by either Lord Anantashesh or the Vedic scriptures. There's just no one's capable of describing the joy, the ecstasy that was there. So like this, the festival of Jagannath Misra went on, and little Lord Chaitanya is lying there, very happy. Of course, he knows what's going on. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. So he's lying there enjoying it all. So devotees, that is actually the description of Jagannath Mishra's festival. Shri Jagannath Mishra ke, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ke, Shri Gopanima Mahotsava ke, Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for sharing this nectar with us. Thank you very much, devotees, for attending the second day of our 4-day festival. So now we'll observe the Aarti with Kirtan, and then there'll be Prasad in the Maki after the Aarti. And then tomorrow, the third day, starts with the Mangal Aarti and greetings of the deities. And then at 7:30, there's a class on the rising moon, Lord Chaitanya's mood and mission, with His Grace Nadia Gadrume Prabhu. And then breakfast at 8:30, and then class again at 9:30 by His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Swami. Chaitanya's culture of the 6 loving exchanges. And then 11 o'clock again, the third class will be on Gaura's heart by Her Grace Gaura Bhumi. And then after the midday Aarti, there'll be a feast again. And at 7 p.m.,